up, everybody? I am Baron Baptiste, and this is the show for disrupting the drift, disrupting the conspiracy for mediocrity in humanity, default humanity. So I'm here today with David Masters. David, how are you?
Great always to be with you, Baron. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
Yeah, really good. I like to say this is a place where we can tell the truth, and the truth can be told and give people, including me, in access to something greater than myself, in access, a line of connection and communication to my creator, my conscience, and to live from that place in myself. And all you listeners, we're looking to have you create that line to that inner place of truth within you so you too can live from your conscience and what's true. So please share the show. We grow the show, and the show is growing. Thank God it is growing organically, naturally, through you. Sharing the show gives others the opportunity to wake up, to elevate, to excavate, to do some deeper life, looking at life and living life from a deeper, truer place. Please share the show. We also right now are putting we're publishing two of these podcasts each week up on the YouTube channel. It's Baron Baptiste YouTube. We have a question, David. It's a really good, this is deep. And I think it's very, what do I want to say? I think it's very relevant to where a lot of people, a lot of humanity are living and what they're dealing with right now. And it has to do with purpose. A loss of purpose, a loss of knowing who you are and what your life is for and being useful. I think it's very important in life to be useful and to have some kind of purpose and cause in life. Now I'm reflecting off the question here, which I'll get right into, but it's like that, David, right? No purpose is no bueno, no good.
Before you even read it, I will say that a lot of people really believe that they are in their purpose until what they perceive to be their purpose is taken away, and then they're in a different space in which they have to rediscover. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing, by the way.
It's an opportunity to really discover what is your true calling in life.
Yes.
Consider you have a true calling in life. And I know for myself, that was a blessing of the pandemic, is having that time to, stop and really check in. Okay, I've been living life a certain way, living life on a certain treadmill or one trajectory, going along with a certain flow, like a river moving in one direction. And the disruption of all that has been such a deep, for myself, a deep blessing, because it's allowed me to really do a deeper soul searching, to come back to, wow, maybe what I was even born with. Or I remember as a young person having a certain sense of being pulled in a direction and pulled in for a certain purpose, and being useful in the world and being of service to something in humanity, which includes me as a part of humanity. So when I'm serving others, I'm serving what's the highest in myself, but also it's interesting how I look at my life in the past and how the river kind of it takes on its own flow. And when you have some success and you have, like, you're doing work, you have a kind of purpose, but then, and it is a purpose, but is it the purpose for your life? And I think that's what you're pointing to here is you can have a purpose, but is it a purpose that really fulfills on who you are and what your life is for in the most essential sense of who you are and what's in congruence with that and your work in the world?
Yes. I'm reminded of the beautiful poem by Rudyard Kipling called If.
Oh
And
yeah,
he
that's good.
addresses this
Yeah.
so perfectly, but can I read just the second paragraph of this very quickly?
Please. Yeah.
This is the second paragraph, and it actually isn't as powerful without the first, but it says, "If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same." You see,
Mm.
the
Mm.
triumph and disaster are both imposters, and part of the culling of people and is the idea that when we meet with these issues in our lives, when we meet with challenges, how we deal with it is really the crux of it. So anyway,
Hmm.
that's I wanted to read that little part of it because it's so beautiful.
Yeah. So the triumph is an imposter,
Yes.
and so is
Disaster. The terrible things that
yeah.
happen to us,
Y-
they're not necessarily always as terrible as we perceive them to be, and it's a perception issue, I think.
Yeah. And the disaster and triumph, if you okay, could be macro or huge things
Yes,
in life,
yes,
the
it could be
bigger things
micro
in
and
life,
macro,
but
yes.
it could be totally micro, right? It could
Yeah.
just be those small things
Well, and
of
by the way,
people.
so many
Hmm.
doubts that we have are those little micro moments. It's the little flaw in the space shuttle that blew up. And so
Hmm.
one little thing can blow up a whole space shuttle. Then you got to figure out, okay, where did I go wrong? That's the part that people don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you give those things, triumph or failure,
Yes.
too much power, you give it too much of your energy, your attention, it takes you completely off course.
Yes.
It takes you down a wrong path. And it's a bleed out. It's a loss of, and again, for triumph or for any kind of failure or things going awry, yeah, or disaster, but it's keeping your center and the ability
Yeah.
to recover center. And I think that's something I don't know if we train ourselves to live by, or
Program.
yes,
Program.
or we,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, program, we adopt. And the other side of it is to live true. You're always in this, uh, I don't necessarily like the word practice because I actually think, practice is something we do. So it is that, but it's deeper than that. It's a state of heart and a state of being,
Yeah.
and it's a state of consciousness, awareness, where you are letting things go, especially if you're deprogramming, unlearning
Mm-hmm.
old ways. It takes a constant stepping up when you see yourself. And I know myself, if I see myself defaulting in old ways, it's in that moment to disrupt where that old way of being and acting would take me and correct course and come back to center, come back to true north, come back to my northern star, that vision for life. And because one quick side note about another way of looking at it is, if something happens and I go into complaint about that thing,
Yeah.
for example, if I
Yeah.
go into complaining about it, I could go into the complaining, I could spend a lot of time complaining about the way of the world right now, the way of politics, the way of economy, the way of just how people are showing up, or I could be in complaint about that. And that's one place I can put my attention. But I think what's really needed, and I think this goes right along the path of the parallel of and with purpose, is vision. To have a vision that you live for and live by and keep truing up to it and measuring up to your vision, and then taking your attention off of the highs and lows of triumph and
Disaster. Yeah.
failure and
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's get into the question here.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Okay. And whoever sent this in, thank you. Appreciate you. We don't mention the names that when you email these into us, we don't mention your name, but you know who you are. When you hear the question, you'll know. And so thank you. Hello, Baron. I am looking for guidance on what I am dealing with right now. I have all the things I need materially, including my family, but life feels empty. I feel the loss of my identity as well as having a purpose. I lost my business during the pandemic. My business gave me a sense of purpose and something to wake up for every day. It also gave me a sense of being useful and like I was giving something of value to my community and society. Currently, I feel very lost and like I'm badly in need of a cause and purpose to live for. I feel like I've lost my identity and the knowledge of who I am. Any insight is greatly appreciated.
That's a huge
David,
question.
what?
Huge.
Yeah, it's layered.
Well,
There's a
so
lot of
couple
layers
of
of
things
depth here.
immediately come to
Mm-hmm.
mind. The whoever
Mm-hmm.
this is has still a lot to be grateful for. And gratitude is a very powerful sense of things. In other words, if you can look back and see what you've lost, but also see what you still have, the person says they still have their family. That's a huge thing because that becomes a number of domino effects of just chaos when families fall apart as well. So the
Mm-hmm.
family's still intact. So there's a reason to be grateful right there. What was the next part of it? I have to go back and deconstruct this a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I have all the things I need materially, including my family,
That's
but life
beautiful.
feels
Yeah.
empty.
Yeah.
I feel the loss of my identity
There it
as
is.
well as
Stop.
having
That's it right
purpose.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a word that you need to think about, and it's called being exocentric, which means you're living your life from the outside in. Your life's all about what's happening on the outside. And this creates a poverty of silence. Because in the silence is where you discover the most important things, not about the world, but about yourself, right? And this is where
Yeah.
meditation plays a huge role because meditation
Mm-hmm.
brings you back into and I love the word, you said practice. We used to say practicing the present, just being
Mm-hmm.
here now. That's all you do. And it reminds me of what the saying about how do you eat an elephant? One spoonful at a time. It's the same with truth.
I've never heard that. What does that mean?
It means you can't eat an elephant
You
but
have to
one
you have to
spoonful at a
detail
time.
that
You
one.
can eat a whole elephant one spoonful at a time. That's the only way you can eat an elephant, like everything
Can
else.
you actually
It's a metaphor.
if you were to actually eat the thing, you could
Yes.
only do it one spoonful at a time if you were to eat an elephant.
But the
And I
reason
think the same would go for a
yeah,
cow, right?
anything, but an elephant so big,
Yeah,
or a
okay,
whale for
got it.
that matter.
Yeah,
But
clear.
the
Mhm.
same is true with truth, and the same is true with meaning. You can
Mm.
only consume the truth one spoonful at a time. You can't just get it all.
Mm.
You can't take all
Mm.
the truth in and have it
Yeah.
all be there. You've got to take it every time, one spoonful. And this is the replenishing because you cannot possibly fulfill all the
Mhm.
needs that you have for truth by trying to overdose on it. You
Yeah.
take it one
Let
little dose at a time.
Yeah. 1 day, 1 hour,
That's right.
1 minute, moment to moment.
Yes.
It's the arising moment, the potential that lives within the arising moment. And in that moment, in the space of and the potential of the fertile present moment dictates how you live your life. If you live it by truth or you live it by lies, or you're living in deception and fantasy and in your imagination and storyland, or your feet are on the ground, your eyes are open, your ears are open, you're here and you're in the present, and in the presence of some greater presence, it gives you some greater insight. I like to call it understanding. You're standing underneath. Understanding is to stand under a bigger, greater kind of awareness,
Hmm.
a higher kind of witness that also is an intelligence, and it speaks to us through our conscience. I being still, right? Getting quiet and just creating that time every morning, throughout your day, in the evening, finding those moments. I know for me, like 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. is my time where the world is quiet. Things are settled down in the environment. And I can create that, get still, and it creates a line of communication to I was going to say myself, but it's deeper. It's almost something greater than myself, is probably more accurately stated. And then to live from that, to flow from that from the inside out. So you're formed from, and your flow is from the inside out, rather than the whole flow from the outside in, the world outside in. You see the disturbance of what's happening in the world. We're all in the experience of people losing it, people losing their sensibilities, their common sense, people losing their health, mind health, body health, their spiritual health. And when I say health, wholeness, to be whole and complete, it's lost in that the consumer mind, consuming from the outside in,
Yeah.
the inflow. But to be outflow, formed from within and flowing from the within out, is to create, to build, and to
So,
build yourself, right? Your own confidence.
yeah, what you're saying is so important because if you're building your world from the outside in, it's like a closet. There's only so much room in a closet. And here you are stuffing all this stuff from the outside. You're bringing it in. Your closet is your mind, and it's your
Mm-hmm.
soul, and it's your being. And you're just stuffing stuff in there. But what's happening is you're taking up the space that's in there with stuff from the
Mm-hmm.
outside. So here's what Blaise Pascal said. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
Blaise Pascal, 1623 to 1662, he didn't live very long. Basically, he lived about 40 years. He
Mm-hmm.
said, all human evil comes from a single cause, man's inability to sit still in a room. This is where the poverty of silence comes in, because in the silence, newness is born. Newness of self, newness of a being, newness of purpose, newness, brand newness of every moment, because every moment is filled with possibility. It's filled, it's ripe, it's pregnant with possibility for the person who sits still long enough to receive it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Let me say this. So there, in the stillness and the newness that's available in the stillness, is what I'll say new awareness
Mm-hmm.
of what's actually going on with you, what's actually in your space. I think most people operate above ground, so to speak, above the ground of their being, and including above the ground of their body and the physical universe. They live in the head and are relating to the liar in the head, imagination, thoughts, like and you get further away from what's so is what's actually going on with you. So here's what I want to say. In the new awareness, you may discover the good and the bad and the ugly,
Yeah.
or in Blaise Pascal's words, the evil that's within you. Like when you get still and quiet, it's like it's you could say it's like scanning your soul, but I think it's more than that. It's you're getting present to what's in your heart, what's actually going on with you. When I say that, it's, well, resentment, disturbance, the stress, and then when you start to see, you get present to, that's where the opportunity of a new way of being. Maybe you see you're being prideful, and you're being egotistical, and you're being just all about me, myself, and I, and you're being out of that reactive when people aren't measuring up to your expectations of how they should be, because the universe rotates around you, and you start to see your reactiveness out of this faultiness or this brokenness of being. And when I say brokenness, it's a separation from what's true, a separation from conscience. Your conscience is, con is with, chintz is knowing, like science, it's knowledge, an inner knowing. And but this is my point. Sometimes you have to first walk through the fire. You have to go through the fire, and that ring of fire, maybe when you get present to what's actually going on with you, it's fear. Maybe there's fear, there's anger, there's resentment, there's unfinished business, there's grudges, there's judgments. When you judge another, you're holding a sword over yourself. It's a judgment on self, because it always, at the end of the day, life is a full length mirror. You're
Oh,
playing tennis against a wall with yourself.
sure.
So you throw the ball out and it bounces right back at you. None of us are immune to that. But I wanted to just point to that because I think in the stillness, we don't I don't want to dress it up like it's all just pretty and you get still and it's revelation to a new way. It is that. Absolutely. That's what's available. But it's you may also first discover it's like I think your dad used to say this. It's like waking up with your house on fire in the
Mm,
middle of the night. You're just going along sleeping.
yeah,
You're asleep to life. You're
yeah.
asleep to what's actually going on with you and your life and who you are. You're asleep to the truth and your true essential self. And you're asleep to the the creator. You're separated from that. And so when you suddenly get still and quiet, like Blaise Pascal said, be in a room alone and in stillness. I'm paraphrasing, but you discover what's actually going. You get connected to reality, but then it allows you to see, and from that seeing, you can give things up. You can forgive. You can let go. You can lay down
Mhm.
your old, prideful, egotistical, me-centered life and pick up a new life, or a new life will pick you up. You don't even need to pick it up. You just let go, empty the cup, give things up to get empty, create the environment where now something new and true to you and what life could be, your purpose. Back to the question here, the purpose, a sense of identity and formed from within and then living that outward. And I think then naturally purpose begins to arise. You don't have to find it, it finds you.
That is true. And the word identity is another interesting word because I think it was Freud who identified the id. That's the ego, the self, the ego self, the
Is that all
subconscious.
negative? When is the id considered like a negative
Not necessarily.
or not necessarily? It's just
Mm-mm. It's the
the
subconscious part of
personality.
you,
It's
right?
the, yeah,
It's the ego
I
that
see. Yeah.
you don't necessarily see as they're operating, but I call it an id entity because there's a subconscious self that has all these beliefs that's been programmed into it. We have all these expectations of ourselves and other people. And the
Mm,
expectations really, in order for you to be free, expectations have to be like shattered because
yeah.
expectations are like shackles.
Yeah.
And when you have expectations, you're building an alternate reality to actual reality. When
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking, this is how it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be, and this is what I've got to do, and reality may be entirely a whole nother thing.
And then
So
those two worlds don't your world and the world
that's right.
don't match
That's
up.
right. Yeah.
And then it's not that life breaks you, but you're broken by your expectations of what life should be. You're
Right.
shooting on yourself.
You're
But
shooting.
that's what breaks you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
by the way, most of the expectations you have of yourself are coming from where? Are they coming from inside of you? Or are they coming from the outside? When you look at the world and you're continuing to bring in what's on the outside, and you're watching the
Mhm.
people drive by with their new Tesla, and you're watching this person over here with their nice new fashion and whatever it is, their new things that they have, and you look at your life,
Mhm.
you go, "Oh, that's something that I would like to have." And then all of a sudden, the expectation around that is, "Here's what you got to
Mhm.
do in order to get it." This is not really you. Are you really happy once you get it anyway?
Mhm.
And the answer is
Yep.
you're not necessarily, because you need another expectation to keep pulling you forward. This is why I'm saying eating an elephant one spoonful at a time is the same as finding a new identity. You can't do it all at once. You got to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And with the little
Mhm.
spoonful of truth that you take, let that truth nourish you and start to bring you
Yeah.
back to life, and start to heal from the life that you've created without knowing that you were creating it until it all fell apart. And now you've got a new opportunity to start all over again.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, oh, it's good because a lot of things are coming to mind, but one thing is identity. In the question here, the person says, "Yeah, I have lost I feel the loss of my identity as well as having a purpose." But that loss of identity, and you pointed this out earlier, but the loss of identity is actually a beautiful thing because you're standing in a new clearing.
Mhm.
You're standing in a new space because to me, identity also means like to identify. So what do I identify with?
Yeah,
So the old self, if I look at the old Baron, it's like who I used to identify myself to be,
right.
and those things I identify with. I could see it in myself. And people identify with their opinions. They identify with the stories and narratives they have about other people in their life gives them a sense of self, a sense of identity. And okay, or I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a atheist, I'm a
Mm.
Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Buddhist. We
Mhm.
identify with all these things. I have success, I have status, or in my circle of people, or I have things I identify with. But when you lose these things, and I think what I want to emphasize here, I think to I would, this is my, so the person asked, any insight is greatly appreciated. I would continue doing soul searching and make sure you've actually intentionally lost your old identity. I know it feels like you've lost your identity, but did you really burn it all the way down to the ground
Mm.
and get down to zero of anything you don't want,
Mhm.
including old resentments? Have you gone and forgiven your mom? Have you gone and forgiven your father? Have you gone
Or
and
that business
forgiven your
partner that
sibling?
stabbed you in the back.
Or that business partner, or all
Yeah,
those people who betrayed you, or you thought they were your friends and you discover they weren't.
yeah,
Have you forgiven all that? And when I say forgive, like really given all your opinions and judgments up and over, like empty out, burn it to the ground. I remember at one point in my business several years ago, the business had been misrun by, I had hired an executive type person. I took my hands off the steering wheel and this person ran things into the ground. And I realized at a certain point that, oh, shoot, man, I need to rebuild from the ground up. But I went to a mentor of mine, a very successful business guy. It's actually Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon. And I told him what was going on. And I said, and I actually really want to burn the old model to the ground. This isn't actually this long ago. This is probably in 2018-ish or something. And
mm,
I just said, the business coming apart. What he said to me, I'll never forget it. He said, have you burned? Okay, so the business has come apart at the ground level. And then he said, but if you really burned it all the way down to the ground. And then he goes, check in with me in 2 weeks. So I'd call him up 2 weeks later and he'd be like, first thing he does, so did you burn it all to the ground? Did you burn it like all the way down? And I'm like, no, there's still this thing, but this thing, I really like this thing, or he's like, burn it to the ground and start from
yeah,
put in a whole new model for living and operating, doing business, rather than building kind of a new model on top of an old broken model,
right.
come out with a whole new way. I say this because that is, I see this just from self, from first person self, leading myself, leading life, to take a look. And I invite all of you, take a look at, are you still okay? Maybe you feel like you've lost an identity, but look, I think to really transform one's life, you have to give up all of your opinions. Like you have to burn all of your opinions to the ground. And I say this from the standpoint of humility, like coming to a base level of humility. And then when you pray, and then when you get still and quiet, you're coming as a humble servant to serve something greater in life, a greater purpose in life. But I think to the degree that any of us hold on to the old identity, we're keeping God out. We're keeping a higher purpose out. I think to discover the higher purpose, you first have to come down to the lowest common denominator. And I'd say, and the most ugly parts of oneself that you may be holding on to. But in this new you find a new way, but then you'll start identifying with your calling. You'll start identifying with your family in a new way. You'll
Mm,
start identifying with your country, society, community, in a new way. You'll start an identity will be born out of what you're now up to in life, not what you were up to in the past. Because and then I want to hand this over to you, David, but something about this question, what I'm present to is it's still pointing to a comparison of an old life, of how things used to be,
Yeah.
maybe pre-pandemic. And you hear people talking like that all the time, and often in a kind of complaint, coming from a kind of complaint of how life's so hard now. I don't know what I want to do next, or I don't know who I am, or I don't know where to start. I've lost everything. And maybe all of that is true, not to invalidate that experience. And though, to give up that was somehow better, because consider what's now available is an opportunity to really, truly, well, to live true.
Mm. I remember when I was in my teen years, I used to think about, who am I? And then the answer would come back, you're a surfer. Because to me, that was a huge part of my identity,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
a surfer. And so from that surfer identity, I derived a sense of my purpose, and my purpose was to ride waves. And that was it. I did that
Mm-hmm.
until I was in my mid 20s. But I never felt really comfortable with that idea that I'm a surfer, because you are not what you do. No,
Yeah.
no, there's just so much more to you, because where does what you do come from? It comes from what you think and what you
Mm-hmm.
believe. And so
Mm-hmm.
all the thoughts and all the beliefs about yourself that cause you
Mm-hmm.
to do the things that you do, see, we're not
Mm-hmm.
looking at the original cause. The
Yeah.
original cause is, you're not what you do. You never were. And
Yeah.
your sense of you, the person says they felt like they were contributing to their community. I don't know what kind of thing that they were doing, but see,
Mm-hmm.
what all this is a support mechanism for the belief systems that you have.
Yeah.
And the belief
Yeah.
systems hold you in place. The status quo, belief
Yeah.
systems are all about what make you. So I say to you, you're not what you do. You never were. And here's the feeling of loss. You're what you did, and who you were was not your legs. You haven't lost your legs.
Mm-hmm.
You're still capable of doing all the
Well,
things that you could possibly do.
your spiritual legs.
You haven't lost your legs, period. You just haven't lost
Yeah.
you're not. And people that lose their legs, by the way, you were telling me about your friend Dan. Here's a guy
Mm-hmm.
who's more active in his life than he ever would have been had he not lost his legs.
Mm-hmm.
See, if he
Yeah.
was a normal guy, he would just go about doing normal things. But this is a guy who's
Yeah.
driven to help other people.
Yeah.
So I'm just
We're
saying,
talking we're
yeah,
talking about a friend of mine, Dan, who lost his legs
yeah,
in the Afghanistan war.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, very good. Okay. Very good, you all. I think we should leave it right here. It's
yeah.
a very perfect place. Thank you again for the question. Please share the show, you all. We appreciate that. I'll leave this quote comes to mind by Paul. It's biblical. Paul in the Bible said, "Do not despise the days of small beginnings."
Mm,
And putting one foot in front of the other, beginning right now, this day, go have those conversations you need to have with whoever. Clean up the past with yourself, with others. Put your eyes on getting quiet, getting still, and discovering the line of communication, new lines of communication to new levels and dimensions of yourself, who you are, what you really want, and what I think more importantly is what is pulling you, what is calling you forward. Get clear, get lined up to that. And you may not, again, see the whole elephant. It's not about that, but you're being pulled, and it's one step. Okay, I'm being pulled in this direction. What if you were to live by conscience, that inner knowing? What if you were to live just for 30 days, like completely true to this, from this line of communication, and then make it known to yourself, make it known to others, your environments, make it known, the line of communication to yourself, who are you, and make it known ongoingly, one step at a time, one bite at a time, one moment to moment in the arising potential of every moment, every day. All right, y'all. Thank you. Stay blessed. Thank you, David.
thank you, Baron.